So what have New Zealand educationists been doing about this problem? Well, they've done quite a lot, actually. So the first round of efforts were in the 1980s when, the first phase in addressing educational outcomes for Māori, coupled with a serious concern about the survival of the Māori language, was the creation of what we call kura kaupapa Māori schools, beginning in the 1980s. This meant Māori language immersion and practices based on Māori custom. These schools were created by Māori for Māori, although not on an exclusive basis, so anyone could send their children there. They did not at first receive a lot of official support, one has to say, but they are now a recognised part of the school system, and their results have been promising. And I quote from Alton Lee, by 2012, the percentage of Māori exiting kura kaupapa schools with level 2 NCEA or better was virtually the same as for all students, and almost 19% higher than for Māori nationally. So this appears to be, this language immersion approach appeared to be a great success, just from a standard educational point of view. But what about Māori students in the mainstream schools, which have had this heritage of monolingualism, monoculturalism, and actually I'm sure there would be Māori people still alive today who could tell you that when they were at school they were punished for speaking Māori. They were punished for speaking Māori and forced to speak English. So that's a relatively recent heritage. So this is from what's called the Te Kotahitanga program. That basically means unity. So it was a research and professional development project that was launched in 2001 and selected mainstream schools. So I'll just quote from the authors of that. It supports teachers to improve Māori students' learning and achievement, enabling teachers to create a culturally responsive context for learning, which is responsive to evidence of student performance and understandings, and enables school leaders and the wider school community to focus on changing school structures and organisations to more effectively support teachers in this endeavour, end of quote. So this involved Indigenous expertise along with non-Māori educators. So it included an emphasis on relationship building, the family and community, and also leadership in the schools and the development of professional teacher capability and building relationships with Māori students and the families. So the paper, the research report on this program refers to a culturally responsive pedagogy of relations. This meant that, and again I quote, the teachers demonstrate on a daily basis that they care for the students as culturally located individuals. They have high expectations of the learning for students. They are able to manage their classroom so as to promote learning. They are able to engage in a range of discursive learning interactions with students or facilitate students to engage with others in these ways. They know a range of strategies that can facilitate learning interactions. They promote, monitor and reflect upon learning outcomes that in turn lead to improvements in Māori student achievement, and they share this knowledge with the students. End of quote. So culture counts. The learning is supposed to be more interactive. Students can initiate learning activities and power is shared. Now these are the results for phase 5 of the Kotahitanga schools, and there's a comparison with matched a kind of control group, so to speak, of schools. And you don't have to worry too much about the tables. I'm going to show you a representative graph in a little while, which is rather more, I think, easy to follow. But as you can see, it was covered NCEA levels 1, 2 and 3 and university entrance. So first, regarding wellbeing and my claim that we evaluate it and we do not measure it, I ask whether educational policymakers and teachers are using indicators of success that account for what we really value. And I acknowledge that there are diverse groups in any society who will and do express differing values and value priorities. That is, when I say what we really value, there are many versions of who is or should be included in the pronoun we. Policymakers may resort to valuing mainly that which is measurable, such as national exam and PISA results, which are highly individualised, whereas other different cultures have different levels of commitment to individuality. The Hawthorne effect and observer bias may have had a lot to do with the positive results from Te Kotahitanga, but should we view that as methodological contamination and as bias, or should we learn from it that positive supervision and observation of performance can improve performance? Teachers need and desire to be treated as professionals, and they want to do well in the job that they train for. More bureaucratic controls and assessments as substitutes for professional supervision, mentoring and development is almost guaranteed, I argue, to kill the goose that lays the golden egg. Well-being for minority groups in our schools, especially for those who are Indigenous to our country, means a sense of belonging, such that one is recognised positively for whom one is. How do I see myself reflected in what happens at school? Now, I think it is fair to say that in former times, Māori would not have seen themselves recognised as active participants in our public schools, I have to admit. The relationships with family and community are important and should become a part of program development. The teacher-student relationship, not just the teacher or the student as individualised statistical factors, is also critical. For example, teachers' supportiveness towards students does appear to foster a sense of belonging in school. For the well-being of students at school, for their development in the future, we should regard teaching and learning in terms of developing relationships, or as a dialectic of mutual and transformative recognition. That will help, I argue, to avoid instrumentalism and cultural essentialism, but cultural diversity as well as economic inequality should be taken into account to address whatever it is we mean by well-being.